Hello, I'm Josh Hellman. Welcome back to another Just Films and That New Release special. This time around, I'm going to be taking you through my thoughts on the MCU's latest offering, The Marvels. As with all the others, I will keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but if you don't want to know anything at all, make sure you listen to this after you've seen it. Whilst I've got your attention, if you could head over to the app you're listening to this on and give us a little rating and review, it will be massively appreciated. But listen, thanks for listening anyway. You're a wonderful, wonderful person. I'm sure you are. And how are you? Are you well? If you don't know anyway, the film is a sequel to 2019's Captain Marvel, as well as continuing on from some of the TV shows and the wider Marvel films as well. So you've got WandaVision, Miss Marvel, and obviously the most recent Avengers films as well. In terms of the plot, we find our hero, Captain Marvel, played by Brie Larson. She's doing her thing out in space before encountering a villain called Dar-Ben, played by Zawe Ashton, who's a Kree hell-bent on revenge against Captain Marvel for her actions in destroying the Supreme Intelligence in the last film, which resulted in some unexpected consequences to the home planet of the Kree when Captain Marvel destroyed it. If you think about the Kree, if you don't know about the Kree, they are the a race of aliens that Captain Marvel was sort of raised believing she was one of them, and it turned out they'd found her after an airplane crash, and that's how she got her powers, because of something on an airplane, blah, blah, blah. We've all seen the first one, and if you haven't, you're probably not listening to this. Anyway, one thing leads to another, and we find Captain Marvel, something happens to her, and she ends up swapping places with both Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, and Monica Rambeau every time they use their powers. And this leads to them teaming up to defeat Dar-Ben and to try and fix their position-switching dilemma, shall we say. So, let's get stuck in. Overall, listen, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really, really good fun. I thought it was exactly what Marvel needed. It was a well-told story that was well-paced, not too bogged down with other bits, and it has great action, set pieces in it as well. Really great balance between the comedy and the action and the sci-fi. It's a little bit more spacey than some of the other Marvel stuff, but even the last Captain Marvel. So if you think of things like Guardians of the Galaxy films, it's a little bit more like that in terms of how it looks and how it feels. So that gives them a lot to work with in terms of costumes and production design, and I think they do a really great job. It's very visually interesting in places. They come up with some great ideas in there which I've not seen before, and it felt, do you know what? It felt a little bit fresher to me than some of the other Marvel films as well. So you got the three leads in there as well. Brie Larson, Teyonah Parris, and Iman Vellani are all great in this as Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, and Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, respectively. They all get their own little moments to shine as well, which I really liked. But their chemistry between them is great as well when they're together. They do come up with some little ideas for this, for sort of keeping it feeling fresh, which is sort of already touched on before. So one of the problems I think you have with a character like Captain Marvel, I think she's a little bit overpowered. So you have that Superman problem of it lacking vulnerability and stakes and relatability. But the device they use in terms of them swapping places means she can't just beat everyone with her powers. Because every time she uses her powers, she swaps places with one of the other two who aren't as powerful and aren't experienced. So that gives the film stakes, which I really, really liked. Kamala Khan and her family were a highlight as well. I thought it brought some much needed levity to the story. Iman Vellani, she's a real standout in this for me. She's likable, she's charming, she's a star. I haven't actually seen the Miss Marvel TV series. I haven't got around to watching it yet, but I may well check it out now because of her. It's almost entirely female led. It's led by three heroes. The villain is it's led by three female heroes, should I say. The villain is a woman. It's written and directed by a woman. It's got a really diverse cast as well. Now, obviously, I'm a straight white man, so I'm not going to go into how important that is, because you should really look into that, from voices that matter more than mine and have much more lived experience than me. But I thought it was important to note, at a time when things feel so divided, that these things are now rightfully happening and happening well. Also, they don't draw attention to it as well in a way that you think they're doing it because they want a pat on the back. So I thought that was really great. In terms of dislikes, I don't really have much written here, to be honest, in my notes. I think I have two things. The first is that I thought Zawe Ashton was really, really great in this. I've not seen her in much before, but I thought she was a little bit underused. So I'd maybe have liked a little bit more character building for her. But I pointed that out to my partner after we got home, and she said, well, you've just said how much you like the shorter runtime, so perhaps if they'd increased that with some building for her, you would have moaned about the fact that it was a little bit bloated. So she's probably right in that sense. Perhaps it's an unwinnable fight for Marvel in that sense. The second point, and the main point I do want to say, and it's the only real issue I've got with it, is there's probably a little bit too much lore from the wider MCU for me. I do think it relies on you having seen the TV stuff. As I said before, I haven't seen Miss Marvel and I haven't gotten around to it yet. But I did know who she was and roughly what her power set was, how she got her powers, and who her family was, and stuff like that. But that's because I read around it and I listen to stuff and I watch stuff. So I'm in that world in terms of constantly having to review these films and watching them just as a fan of them as well. And don't get me wrong, it does a good job of trying to introduce you to those characters if you haven't seen this TV series. And I muddled through again, having not seen the TV series. But I think if you don't watch and listen and aren't constantly looking into stuff around the MCU as a fan, then if you're not a fan of that wider MCU, then you might have felt yourself a little bit lost, particularly in the first half an hour. And that's probably representative of a wider issue that's becoming apparent with Marvel in terms of the amount of content that's just purely out there. Other than that, there's a little bit of stuff towards the end around convenience and plot that I can't really go into without spoiling it, but it's neither here nor there, really. Listen, just to finish, I was pleasantly surprised by this one. I've been a bit fatigued by some of the Marvel content out there, really, and recently, and I thought this was really refreshing. I thought it was really escapist. I sat down after a long week, and I was entertained for 100 minutes without it missing a beat. It was upbeat, it was well paced, it was engaging, it was funny. It was, it was just exactly what I needed on a Friday night. I really, really enjoyed it. The film's already had some bad press. I think some people are putting that down to Marvel fatigue, which I definitely have, but this didn't fix it for me, but it just felt like a breath of fresh air. I think people have taken issue with it for various reasons. Yes, you can say that Marvel fatigue, but for example, I checked the IMDb score after I got out, and it was 2 out of 10. It's now up to just over 6 out of 10, and maybe that'll go up or maybe that'll go down. But I think that's a pretty good, it's pretty good evidence of some review bombing there, and probably some more review bombing to come. If you don't know what review bombing is, it's when people target a film and give it bad reviews because they take issue with it sometimes without having ever seen it. And I can't help but think that in this instance, it's nothing to do with Marvel fatigue. It's coming from a place of reluctance, resistance to change, or even the prejudice of little insecure people out there who don't like the fact that the world's moved on and the world's diversified. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for democracy. I'm all for free speech. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and maybe I just saw something there that others didn't, or vice versa. But I can't help thinking that it's not a coincidence that the film comes out with three female leads of different ethnicities playing three, powerful ass-kicking superheroes, and people seem to have taken issue with that. But read into that what you will. As ever, get out there, give it a watch, and make up your own mind. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next time. Cheerio.